so if people can take a seat, that'd be great. So I'll call to order the Planning Commission meeting on January 21st. I don't see a roll call on here. Do you want to do that, or do we, I guess, you got it? All right, you got it. All right, good. All right, so we have approval of minutes. We've got 2 different meetings to approve the minutes for. If someone would like to make a motion to approve those.
I'll move to approve.
All right, is there a second? All right, second.
We're doing both?
Yeah.
Okay, I move to approve both, yeah.
Okay, good. Any discussion at all, changes? All right, all in favor of approving both the minutes from December 12 and December 17, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, so that was approved. Next, public appearances for non-agenda items. Everything I have up here is for something on the agenda, so looks like a few more might be coming up, but I think everything's here on the things on the agenda. Agenda review, I don't think there's any need to change anything, but if someone needs to change something, let me know. All right, seeing none, then let's get right into it. First up is a minor PDD modification request for 2001 Traceway Drive. I don't think David is here. Governors? Oh, are you here for? Oh, okay, all right. Coming up, let us know. Tell us about what's going on here.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, there's buttons over here. Do I need to worry about these? Show
Nope.
me or off? All
No,
right.
you're on. Yep. Yeah, just maybe let us know who you are.
All right, my name's Dan Yoder. I'm with Sign Art Studio, part of the design team that worked with David and his team on coming up with what we have proposed. As far as, are you able to pull that one up? I think, some of the challenges with this particular site is that we have a pretty tight setback. Property line is very close to the building, obviously on a very prominent part of Fish Hatchery Road. So when speaking with the client, we really wanted to explore the blade sign as an opportunity to kind of swap out, a traditional monument sign. I think, and it should be noted too that I know you guys probably didn't speak on the signage during the original submittal, but I know all along they've shown a blade sign. I believe it's almost 3.5, almost 4 stories tall on the original submittal, which I did put a note on here on page 38 of their original submittal. I don't know if we need to pull it up now or not, but so if we look at, landscaping plan, the setback, tight, busy corner, it didn't seem like a very good opportunity to do a blade sign or to do a monument sign. Part of where we landed in terms of design on this is we wanted to go with, a little bit of a nostalgic design, kind of looking back at, blade signs of the past. And I think considering the clientele that will be at the facility, we wanted to create some familiarity there. And I think that, whenever there's familiarity back to, a time that creates a sense of comfort. So those were just some thoughts, when it comes to the design itself. It is a modern design, but again, taking cues from, kind of the golden era of what I would say was the sign era, back in the day. A couple other things I wanted to address, and maybe you guys will bring this up, but maybe we'll hit it first. As far as any sleeping quarters that are exposed, there are no sleeping quarters that are going to be exposed to any of that lighting, just so you guys are aware of that. And in terms of size, we do think it's appropriate, and size of scale to the building sometimes. When blade signs are done, they do tend to look small on the building, being that Fitchburg does allow, I guess, with this rezone, would otherwise allow for 150 square feet of signage. We're showing around 120 square feet. And we think it'll be a great addition to the building, and really work well for such a busy corridor. So I guess outside of that, do you guys have any questions for me? Feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll let you guys do your thing.
Questions at all? I guess I just, well, do you want to speak maybe from a staff perspective?
Just a staff review. As the Plan Commission may recall, this property at the corner of Traceway and Fish Hatchery Road has been granted the PDD zoning, Plan Development District. So that's a negotiated, create your own zoning district where all of the zoning dimensional standards, setbacks and such are sort of created specific to this project. The applicant also has the opportunity to create standards specific to the project for signage, but at the time of the PDD approval for this project, those were not proposed. So instead, the project just defaulted to Chapter 26, which is the sign code, and that limits multifamily signage to 40 square feet or slightly less for blade signs. So this request would exceed that up to 120 square feet for the blade sign, but in total, would their address signs still be below the total that we normally allow for a commercial business at 150 square feet? So the staff recommendation is for approval. And then there is one other procedural note. Since this is PDD zoning, if the Plan Commission determines that this is a minor change, you can approve it tonight or modify and approve it tonight if there are any concerns. If you felt it was a substantial change, it would need to go back through the whole rezoning procedure, which in staff's opinion, I didn't think that was necessary for the signage request.
Thoughts at all? I think, yeah,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's a minor issue, and it's very cool. I like it.
Thank
I think it looks great.
Thank you.
yeah, I think looking at it, I think it's a great sign, looks great. My only concern was just that it's 3 stories high. That seems pretty tall. So that'd be my only thought. I don't know, if you talked about the height and why you chose, I don't know, I can't see the numbers of how tall this is. 29 feet, okay.
29, I think, we're looking at a, real easy on paper elevation view. As far as its actual height, size in relation to the building, when you're coming, you're heading south on Fish Hatch, you're gonna be a little more elevated on Fish Hatch, so I think you're gonna have a real good view. Heading north also, I think, if I remember correctly, is there a little bit of a dip there, down by where the DNR is?
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, I think it works real well. But again, we kind of look at this not only from a design standpoint, also from a mathematical standpoint. What are the letter heights we're looking at? That's really where we start when it comes to a effective sign design, making sure we got the letter heights that will be visible and legible. Obviously, Highline is there. Senior apartments is a very critical piece of information as well. So those 2 things start to really kind of drive when it comes to size as well.
I know that being previous life designing for billboards and things like that, there's different size font requirements to be able
Sure.
to see from a certain distance away.
Yeah.
Do you know roughly how far away this is legible at this font size?
I'm honestly probably just going on gut and experience here. I would say Highline's easily gonna be read from, quite a ways.
Yep.
And that's obviously the intent. When it comes to senior apartments, I would probably put that at 250 to 300 feet, give or take, right in there, which gives the viewer enough time to make a decision to turn in. Obviously, this is a bit of a destination, so it's not necessarily marketing per se. But again, bring this into the context of a monument sign, you're gonna have, I would think, a much more invasive impact, in relation to the building and size and scale there. So I think this is the good, is the right decision for this.
Yeah, Lane.
Proportion, I think it looks great. One question, across the street, the juice factory building and their retail they're gonna have on Fish Hatchery as well, where would this, the modification we're gonna make set us up precedence-wise for anything they might come
I'm
at us
sure they'll
with?
ask for the same thing, if they want a blade sign, or the same at least amount of square feet. So they'll probably want, at least 120, if not 150, because I know there's some address signage. But to me, I think that address signage is important. So my guess is they'll come in and want the exact same thing.
But we're comfortable with knowing that's coming, making this modification?
I don't know, are you?
Sure. Sure. Last question.
Yes, sir.
It's backlit, I'm assuming, right?
Correct. Yeah, so basically, if you see that on the right side there, we're showing kind of crude, but, it is a rendering of what it looked like at night. So the background itself would be opaque. That's actually going to be aluminum. And where all the letters and logos are, that's going to be reverse cut to allow for lighting to shine through. And then we have these kind of edge fin elements. We're calling them fins, that those would actually edge light. So that's probably showing, that's a little optimistic as far as how bright those fins are going to look.
Yeah, I got
They're
it
going to
here.
kind of gradient out to dimmer towards the edges. And they'll be a little brighter along the edge of the sign.
Fair. And just one sign on Fish Hatchery, nothing
Correct.
Raceway.
Yeah, the other signs are literally, they're just address numbers.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I like it. It's kind of Art Deco-y.
thank you. Yeah, we had fun with it. Took us a while to get to that one, but we got there.
Tom, did you? Go ahead.
You probably thought of this, but there's
Maybe
so
not.
many people that I can see this happening already. The Highlands of Madison.
Excuse me?
You may have thought of this, but I could see this happening where we have the Highlands of Madison.
As far
Not
as,
in Madison,
as far as the name?
as far as the
recognition?
name.
Okay.
If you took your same sign and just went out further, don't change anything, and put of Fitchburg, is that a possibility? Or did you talk about it? Maybe you already talked about it.
That is
Now-
not my call. I didn't come up with a name personally, but although I would, if you liked it, I will take credit for it.
Okay.
I can certainly
I'm
note
okay.
that.
The only reason I raised this question is I'm trying to get the Fitchburg name out there as much as I can.
Sure.
And if people say the Highlands, oh, it's in Madison. No, it's not in Madison. Just like, give you an example, a lot of times you read about the Promega in Fitchburg,
Right.
it's in Madison.
Yeah.
No, it's not in Madison.
Sure.
So my point is staff, if they had the same sign and it just went out further and we put of Fitchburg, could that be a possibility?
Yeah, if they decided to add that word
Just
to the sign, we
Fitchburg?
could handle that administratively.
Can you second my motion?
I don't think I have
Forget it,
legal, I don't think I have legal authority, Tom, but I'm
Forget
happy
it,
to.
Forget it. I don't know, it's just a thought. What do you guys think? It just, now, a lot of people out there are going to be thinking, oh, wait a minute. We come down Fish Hatchery Road, and I'm in Fitchburg. Really? Really? What about those that don't know? What about those that are out from out of state and visiting grandma and grandpa?
Well, I could build you guys some real nice Fitchburg signs. Just saying. That's the alternative too.
Just a thought.
And this is High Line, just so, but you know that, right, Tom? Not Highland? Okay.
Yeah.
That there's a name association that might get confused as
Yeah.
the potential, okay. High Life, there we go. I can certainly mention it to the owner. I'm here kind of, representing him. I know the name itself was a very serious point of contention that took probably 6 months for committees on committees on committees to decide. But I can certainly
It's
bring it to
just
their
a thought
attention.
when I just see it now.
Yeah.
It's just a thought.
Absolutely.
I won't lose sleep over it, but I'm just trying to get the name out there,
Sure,
and that's all.
absolutely. Well, I will mention it to them.
Anything else?
I move to approve PDD modification request for 2001 Traceway Drive with the modification as stated by staff.
Second.
All right, Sand. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right.
All right, thank you all.
All right, moving along, we have a public hearing and consideration of conditional use permit for Funks. So first, I will open the public hearing. I don't have anyone that has registered to speak on this for the public, so seeing nothing, I will close the public hearing. Is Jeff or anyone here to speak? Oh, sorry. Come on up if you want to tell us kind of what you're doing. That would be great.
I hate to miss a chance to be on television again, Basically, we're just expanding the pub. Anybody who's been around on Friday nights knows that we have absolutely no room. And part of this is overflow, part of it's entertainment space. Figured we need more room. So that's where we're at.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. You want to provide a staff report?
Sure. So the applicant's requesting approval of a conditional use permit. The zoning for the property is BG Business General, so the restaurant, drinking place, amusement, and entertainment, all of those are uses that are not outright permitted, but that require additional review by the Plan Commission. So that's why we're here tonight. The request is to expand into the adjacent tenant space, which is an additional 5,000 square feet. And we did review the parking availability for the restaurant, and it appears that there's adequate parking in the large shared parking lot to meet the code standards. And in addition, the pub uses are going to be typically opposite in their peak hours to the other tenants in that multi-tenant commercial building. So the parking appears to work well. We did ask some questions as well just about frequency of music events or whether there have been noise complaints. The applicant stated that since they've been open, there haven't been any noise complaints, and that the primary reason for expanding was not to host necessarily more music events, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, although that might be the case, but to expand for dining as well as just maybe some events
Special
occasionally.
events, yeah,
Yep.
that sort of stuff, yeah.
So the staff recommendation is for approval with no conditions.
All right. Thoughts, comments from the commission?
I like it. I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed you've got 4 or 6 fixture units in the men's room, and 1 less in the ladies' room. Yet I hear a lot of times that the biggest complaint people have against design is the fact that the women's room always has a line outside.
We actually, there are 3 stalls in the women's room at this point on that side, and then we have 3 on the other side too. And I have never seen a line out of the women's bathroom unless the sewer backs up, and then nobody goes in.
All right, any other comments, questions at all?
Yeah, I have one for you. Is it a continuous space, or is there going to be separation between the?
We
new
actually
space and
have
the
a
old space?
glass garage door that goes between the 2 that we can open up, so we don't have to have that space open all the time. And we can also then cordon it off for private events.
And do you anticipate keeping both stages then as well?
No, we're going to take the other stage, we're going to repurpose it as, we're going to put the dart machine up there, stairs up and a railing. So we won't be doing likely anything. The problem with the space was that we intended to do a little bit more crazy stuff in the beginning. We wanted people to not expect anything, and we turned into a neighborhood bar really quickly. And it just was not conducive to doing the sort of entertainment stuff that we wanted to. So we'll move that stuff to the other side. And, even things like trivia interrupted our normal flow on that side of the bar. So we'll do things like that on the other side now.
Can you remind me who's on the other side as well?
Burn Boot Camp just moved in, and they have a really weird schedule. The parking lot is full at 5 a.m., and then it empties, and then we get another rush after dinner, and they've been rocking it. It's been a lot more successful than anything else that's been in there, I think.
Any concerns from them? Have you spoken with them?
No, and in fact, we've had lots of discussions. They actually own a restaurant up in La Crosse between 2 of their sites, so we have some synergies there we're going to try and leverage.
Cool, awesome.
Anything else? Want to do a motion then?
I guess I'll have to make a motion since you have an event plan there coming up the chamber.
Yeah,
Thursday.
yeah, we do.
Waiting for
Yeah, that'd be a problem.
So I don't know.
Yeah, this-
We're a little tight on time here.
Kind of bad if I didn't approve that, right? I make a motion to approve public hearing and consideration of conditional use permit CU 233220.
I'll-
0 conditions by staff.
And I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right, that's
Awesome.
approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, moving along. C and D are really kind of about the same thing. And the public hearing's on D, but I'm gonna actually do the public hearing first because it seems weird to me to do action on something without a public hearing. So I don't know if someone's here for the applicant at all. Purcell's or Maxwell's or anyone else? All right. Oh, he's not, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Do you want me to still open the public hearing first?
Sure.
Should I do that? Okay. All right, I'll open the public hearing then for really C and D. I've got a few people that want to speak. First is Mark Jones, if you want to come up, and then after Mark, Aaron Widmer will be next.
Mark Jones, 2266 South Sain Road. I'm on Ag and Rural, and I'm sure it'll be reported out later that we did table that issue for C and D tonight. There's some issues with putting that development of that lot in the middle of an ag piece, and that was never what we intended to allow. So they can move it, and this will give them some time to do that, we hope. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right, Aaron. Hello, welcome.
Hi. All right. We've done this once before. So the land surrounding Went Road has been mostly owned and nurtured by a few farm families for generations. The Purcell family is one of them. The Purcell family has, slowly dwindled. And when Helen Purcell, as she aged, it was the community on Went Road and those other farm families in the area that stepped up and went to her home and made sure she could stay in her home as long as possible and took care of her. During that time, Helen Purcell made a lot of commitments to these neighbors who were taking care of her. She promised some of the extra land to Clayton, who was going to farm it. She had talked about the house that her son was living in after he had gotten sick and started dying, going to one of the grandchildren of Clifford Hageman, the farmer, who owns the largest farm in that area. Helen Purcell existed in a time where verbal promises were enough, where they were honored. Well, when her son died, and Paul Maxwell got involved, all of those verbal promises went out the window. They were not considered anymore. So my main concern as a neighbor on Went Road and from caring for all of these people who cared for Helen Purcell for all those years is that Paul Maxwell is not a member of the family. And I don't feel that he has a strong connection to the land or a commitment to the integrity of our neighborhood and our community. I've seen him break promises that were made by Helen. I feel like this is purely a money-making venture for him. And so my main questions for him, and I wish that he was here tonight because I would love to look in his face and ask him, but I just want to know when this will end. If this house is approved, because this is now the second one on this large plot of land, will this then be the end of this? Will that be the end of the land? Does it have to be 40-acre plots, one house on each? Is that the way that that works?
We're gonna have staff respond to that when you're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, will the surrounding land surrounding these homes remain agricultural? Or are we kind of sliding into a zone now where if we have a house here, then can we have another house 300 feet away from that house and another house 300 feet away from that house? Because if you're in it for the money, I don't really know when it's going to end. So as a neighbor, that is my concern. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
You want to respond now or wait?
I'll do it during the whole statement.
Okay, all right, let me get, all right. I also have Adam Hogan, if you want to come up and speak as well.
Hi, I'm Adam Hogan.
Hi.
I live at 1919 Borkert Road, which is some distance away from this property. I didn't know Helen. My questions are really about development and the development plan. If we're going to develop the area, shouldn't we bring in water from the west, from the industrial park, and develop it as high density rather than individual homes plopped into agricultural acreage? And I guess my other question is, if this property is entitled to a lot division, is my 59 acres entitled to a lot division as well, or several lot divisions? Those are my questions. I don't have anything against Helen or her getting the most out of her real estate in her late years, but I am concerned about the proliferation of development and what I thought was Fitchburg's commitment to farmland in the southern part of Fitchburg, and also to smart development, to preserving that farmland and limiting development. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll have staff in the report kind of answer some of those questions for you as well.
Okay.
I have a few other people who have registered. I have Justin Millard from Verona registering opposition. I oppose the proposition because I believe the land should remain as farmland. Family has been farming for generations, and I believe keeping the land for farming is in the best interest of the community. I also have Risa Hageman from Verona registering opposition. My family has been farming this land for years, and I fear this rezoning could snowball and really hurt our family's farm. We have lost enough small farms. Don't jeopardize any others. Thank you. And then, oh, this person did not sign it, but registering opposition, looks like maybe Marty, based on the email address. And then I also have, oh, okay, what's your name, sir? Marty, okay, it is Marty. Oh, that's okay. And then Don Kosterman from Fitchburg registering opposition as well. And those are the public comments I have on this. So I will close the public hearing, but Sonia, maybe if you want to give staff report, and then we'll have Ag and Rural Affairs report.
So the agenda items include a certified survey map for a land division as well as a rezone request. And what the applicant is looking to do is subdivide the parcel, which is currently just over 70 acres, into 2 lots. So one lot would be reserved for a new rural residential home site and be rezoned to rural residential, and that amounts to about 1.5 acres down here on the Adams Road frontage. And then the remaining acreage of the parcel would stay in exclusive agricultural zoning. The city does have rural development policies, so I brought up the future land use map just to give an illustration of the city of Fitchburg's 36 square mile jurisdiction, with all of the colors on the northern end of our city being our urban developed area where urban services are available, like water, and then the southern 2/3 of the city are mainly in this ag preservation, ag and open space future land use category. So all of this area in the shaded green polka dot falls into that category, and this request is somewhere down in this area of the city. The city does have a policy that guides rural residential development and limits it. It's called RRDC, Rural Residential Development Criteria, and it allocates some potential development only for rural residential, not commercial development or anything further, and not large sort of residential subdivisions, but limited rural residential development based on the acreage of the parent farm. So this particular parcel was over 70 acres, and the potential claims were split up based on one split per 35 acres. So this particular parcel could have up to 2 potential development claims, and this would retire one of them if it was approved. In order to use an RRDC claim to create a new lot, you have to meet various criteria. There's a set of required criteria like lot size. So we look to avoid really large rural lots like 5 or 10 acres. So it's limited to 1.5 acres. You're required to sign a right to farm statement so that you can't contest the agricultural practices on adjacent parcels, among other things. And then there's a set of waivable criteria. And in this application, the applicant's requesting a waiver of 2. One is a history of tillage. So first and foremost, the lot is supposed to be located on property that has no history of tillage or portions of the parcel that were less ideal for ag practices. If that can't be accomplished, you're supposed to locate the lot where it would minimize disruption to ag practices, like on the edge of a field or along a fence or wood line. And then the other waiver that they're requesting is the residential infill requirement. So we look to cluster new rural homes within 300 feet of other existing residential development. And the idea is, again, to minimize disruption for ag practices and also to maintain that rural character by clustering homes together so that you avoid scattered homes every 300 feet or so. So they're looking to go about 500 feet from the nearest residential home, which is located around this, where it says Lot 1 to the east. The applicant's justification was that there is a bit of a drainage swale to the east of where they're proposing the lot that would potentially cause problems for septic or for siting the house. And we did review the contour map with the city's stormwater engineer. And there is a little bit of a swale, just like the applicant noted, where my cursor is, going perpendicular to these orange contour lines. But the stormwater engineer did note that it's a relatively minor swale, and beyond that, we would defer to the applicant and their professionals to determine if it really would be a big problem in siting the house. And it sounds like the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee discussed that further, so I'll let our representative provide that summary.
Okay, I have one question first, just for clarification. So, on this farm, if this were approved, this would be the second home site approved under RRDC, correct?
Yeah, these were 2 separate base farms in our records. So I don't know the full history to be able to say who owned which parcels at which time, but it's set as of the year 1979. So this 70 acres was allocated a different set of potential claims than the rest of the Purcell farm.
It's not all treated as being one farm? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so I think that, Mark Jones pretty much summarized what we discussed. The concern was with regard to the waiver for the 300 feet from another home, and we're unclear as to why the house cannot be sited further to the east so that it's along the property line and would meet that criteria. And so that's, I think, what we're looking for them to bring back, and we voted to table this rather than deny it. We did not appear to have the votes to approve it, and if it were denied, they wouldn't really have the opportunity to have to come back with a separate request. So that was the intent.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing right, because this was 70 acres, there's 2 potential building sites then, because it's 1 per 35 acres. And so this would be one of those, but Ag and Rural Affairs really didn't buy the need to put it where they want it. And so you postponed it essentially and
Yes.
said,
That's
come back
correct.
with better evidence, or we're not okay with it being there.
Right,
Okay.
that was the idea.
Okay. So I want to hear comments, feedback, but I feel like we probably would want to do the same thing Ag and Rural Affairs did. But open to feedback and comments before that.
I'd like to hear at least what they say before I make a decision, right? What their thoughts are. It's a little more.
I don't think there's anyone here representing,
The applicants, right?
right?
Yeah. No, I'm saying I'd like to hear what Ag and Rural would say. I'd like
Oh,
them
right.
to finish their decision first before I make an educated decision out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
The more impactful than me over here, my little city dweller.
Any other comments,
I think
Rich?
we should follow suit.
I'll move to postpone.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question, is there any other corner that this house will be put on? I know we're talking about the corner, moving in the lot to the east, what's that, about 50, 60 feet or whatever it is to get over that swell, but is the other corner an option, or the top right corner, the top left
By the
corner?
bike trail?
I guess, yeah, the bike, other side of the bike trail? Is there an easement issue there, or? Wetland?
That's where the, that's where the-
Well, it appears to be a wetland, it's often not far.
That's it. That makes sense.
It'd be further from other houses, so possibly wetland and also pretty far away from other houses, just with that desire to keep things close together.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to cluster it, yeah.
That's right, the 300 feet. Exactly why I want ag and rural to discuss, that's right. Let them go through it.
All right, any further discussion on postponing? All
I
right,
think I seconded, yeah.
yeah, yeah, we're good. All right, all in favor of postponing, say aye.
Aye.
Any one that does not want to postpone, say nay. All right, so that is, I guess, for the certified survey map, so the rezone, we really probably should do another postpone motion. Someone would like to do that?
Move to postpone.
second.
All right, all in favor of postponing, say aye.
Aye.
Any, that one that doesn't, say nay. All right, that is also postponed. All right, moving along to public hearing consideration of conditional use permit 2333-20. I've got a number of people, so I will first open the public hearing. Got a number of people here for this one. First I have Mark Jones, and then, oh, actually, no, I'm sorry, we should have the applicants first speak before I do the public hearing. Sorry. I would like to give them the opportunity so people that can respond to that. And so we've got Sterling and Lincoln and maybe, I think just two again. All right. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so happy to give a brief overview of the project. I think a number of folks are familiar with the project via some of the community meetings and related informational sessions we've hosted. Maybe we'll just bring up, are we able to bring up the site plan as well? So I could, Sterling, go grab, we have some poster boards as well if people want to take a look. So O'Brien Solar Fields is seeking approval for the conditional use permit as well as architectural design review for a up to 20 megawatt solar array located on the O'Brien Farm. So for folks who may not be familiar, the O'Brien Farm is at the corner of Lacey and Seminole. And we have the site plan here as well as on the big screen, which is helpful as well. A brief overview. So I'm with EDF Renewables. We are acting as the developer as well as the contractor. So we would actually build the project. Once the project is operational, Madison Gas and Electric will actually be the long-term owner. And this will be used under their renewable rider to supply local businesses, many of which are right here in Fitchburg, with that renewable energy as well. And so maybe I can just highlight a few, and I forgot to mention as well, EDF is here for the long term too. We'll actually be maintaining it for Madison Gas and Electric, working in tandem with this. So just wanted to mention a few key details about the project. So high level, it is so again, it's a 20 megawatt, up to 20 megawatt AC project utilizing what's known as a single axis tracker system. So the panels are actually tracking the sun from east to west throughout today to maximize the amount of energy production during the morning and during the afternoon. Importantly, during the afternoon when people go home and turn on their air conditioners or other sources of electricity as well. And so just to put that in perspective, when the sun's highest in the sky, the panels are parallel with the ground, actually. And they go up to a 60-degree tilt one way or the other. In terms of maximum height, it's no more than 12 feet off the ground to give you a better sense of what that looks like. If you're familiar with some other projects that have built in the area, it's no taller, very similar looking to those as well. In terms of environmental impacts, we've completed all of our studies in terms of done a full wetlands review, avoiding any wetlands on site, no impacts from that perspective. The one thing I wanted to raise as well is we're very cognizant of the stormwater concerns in this area, and have been working in tandem with Public Works to design the stormwater both infrastructure, both during construction and for the operation of the project that is going to be best suited for this. Important to note, we're actually utilizing a low-growth pollinator mix for the project, so that'll be underneath all the panels in the entirety of the array as well. And by doing so, it's really the purpose is two or threefold. One is really to maintain that agricultural component to the landscape out here. When you think of a low-growth pollinator, it's almost like a wildflower mix, native grasses, forbs. Purpose in more layman's terms is to attract the bees and the birds from a pollinator perspective. In addition, the second component of that is really the benefits to stormwater. So by doing so, it actually significantly decreases the amount of stormwater runoff from the property. Pollinator habitat has a lot deeper roots compared to the current use of the fields, which are planted for corn and soy. So another benefit as well. By tracking east to west, there's no fixed drip edge or anything like that. They're rotating throughout the day, a little bit of space in between the panels for that as well. In terms of, I know there were questions from, I think, the Planning Commission on setbacks. In terms of setbacks, the closest, we actually exceed the setbacks in, I think, most every instance, but high level, the closest point between the array and the property line is no less than 50 feet, and in most cases, it exceeds that. So if we look at the north side of the project up between the array and Lacey Road, that's actually 150 feet, to give you a frame of reference on that also. Yes, exactly. One of the other benefits about this project is, so we're leasing the land from the O'Brien family, so it would be a lease for up to 35 years. When that's all done, everything comes out of the ground, obligated to restore the site to effectively what it was before the solar installation went in and have it available, maintaining that future availability for agricultural use. Not taking out any topsoil. There really is no grading with this. If people are familiar with the site, it's a flat site, and we generally work with topography that we're given as well with the solar trackers. In terms of access, we're utilizing existing access points off of the O'Brien family farm, both on the east and west side of Seminole Road, and coordinating the specifics of that with Public Works as well as the fire department also. In terms of the fence that we're using for the project, was proposed as a fixed knot agricultural fence, so something you'd regularly see out in this landscape, purpose being that it blends in fairly well with the project, uses wooden posts. It's something that's regularly used in these settings. Contrast it to a chain link, which sticks out more to the eye. This blends in. One of the key components of this as well is we're also proposing a educational kiosk on the west side of Seminole Highway. The purpose of the educational kiosk is really just that. And it had two benefits. One being it's located relatively close to the access. And this was something that came out of a conversation with the city. What could we do to facilitate educational tours, whether it be for local schools and the like, as well as being relatively close to the adjoining Badger Trail, which is right there also, so be able to have a view shed in and understand what is going on. And with that, I really want to open it up to questions, answer anything I can about specific to the general structure of the project or the site plan as well. Thank you.
Excuse me. First, we're going to do the public hearing. So if we'll have people come up and speak, and then after that, I'm sure we'll have more questions for you. So
Sure.
we'll go through that quick. If you can just,
Sure.
take a step back for a second. Got a number of people that want to either speak or have registered. First, I have Mark Jones, and then Judy Stadler will be after that, and there's a few more after that. But start with Mark. So I'm officially opening the public hearing. Like I need to say that maybe.
Mark
All right.
Jones, 2266 South Sain Road, Fitchburg. I support it 100%. The one thing that came up in ag and rural was the area that we were concerned about, the runoff to the south onto the Dunn property, to make sure that as the water comes off the panels, is going to come off a little faster than in some cases, and that we don't end up with a water problem for the neighbor. So ag and rural had talked quite a bit about that. So they assured us that they would work with the city on some buffering on that or whatever they could do. So that was my only concern. I think it's a great project. I really support it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have Judith and then George Froman after that.
I am Judy Stadler. I live at 5629 Newtone Street in the Oak Meadows subdivision. We've been there about 14 and a half years. We moved here from Appleton, Wisconsin, because we wanted to be close to our 2 daughters and our 4 grandchildren who are in the Madison School District. I'm deeply concerned about my children and their future, the future they're facing on this planet because of global climate change. And we've done what we can on our own little bit of property. We have installed 15 solar panels and a charger in our garage, and we have an electric vehicle. And we have a rain garden in the backyard, and a vegetable garden, and a compost bin. And I'm glad that the city is considering this huge development, which I think is a wonderful sign for all our children, our grandchildren, and everybody's children and grandchildren. It's a definite move in the right direction, and it's a feather in the cap of Fitchburg. Thank you.
All right, thank you. George, did you want to speak?
I didn't register to speak.
Oh, okay. Sorry. If you wanted to, you're welcome to. Let's write it then. And then Tony will be after that.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to say was that, I'm in total support of it too. It's just because of the size of it and being this large and in the city, that it's done right, and that there's, like I wrote on there, that there's accountability for the maintenance, because it's a big change to the agricultural use, but I think it's great. I think it's a great project if it's done right. And like I said, accountability on maintenance, I think, is everything to make sure that that the O'Briens aren't left with a lot of maintenance, that that it's done well, and that's basically about it. Because 35 years is a long time, and a lot can change. So I think you should look at all the issues, but I'm in total support of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We got Tony Hartman and Pat O'Brien after that.
Hi, guys. My guess is you're going to hear a lot of pro on this one, and I have to say, I'll go through quickly some of the best reasons that we should be approving this. Is one, we're going to get power close to us. It's going to produce enough power for roughly half of the homes in Fitchburg. We may be asked to do more down the road, but as you all know, we have this little thing going on that's global climate change, and I won't go all Greta Thunberg on you, but it's real, and it's a big issue. The other thing is we're preserving land. I mean, if this was all in organic vegetables or what, I think some of these guys behind me would call truck farming, that'd be a different story. Much, much higher value for the land, but what it's being rented for now, this is a much higher and better use, and it preserves the land. It literally rests the land and will for 25 to 35 years. So fantastic way to, really incubate land for later use for food. And in the meantime, we get power from it. And it's close to us. Physically, those electrons will probably stick around and go to a lot of our homes. The other thing is, many of us worked on this. Some of you sitting up there worked with me, and we pushed for a pledge for Fitchburg to be 100% clean energy, the mayor and Tom, amongst others, and some sitting behind me. And this is an awesome first step. I mean, we're really pushing. I shouldn't say first step, because there are some crusaders out there that already have panels up, but I mean, this is awesome. The other thing is, I think in the end, you want to look at who your partners are in this, and I've seen EDF respond both to public input on this already and to just an ag and rural a few hours ago, saying, we're going to make good on this. Your concerns are our concerns. We're going to be there for the long haul, and I love the fact that they are going to be the maintainers of this over time, and our local utility owns it. And for those of you who don't know, MG&E is the smallest investor-owned utility, I think, in the state. So we really want them to thrive, and they're going to be, the middleman in all of this. EDF's putting them up. They'll be producing power, and it'll come to us. And a lot of the power is going to be at really good prices. The city is going to be buying some of this, and I'm really excited about that. Just sorry that I'm not up there with you voting yes on this one, so jealous. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Tony. I have Pat O'Brien next, and then Robert Owen after that.
I'm Pat O'Brien at 2658 South Seminole Highway, and it's on my brother Tom and my farm, and our wives Lynn and Jean O'Brien's farm. And we've been excited right from the start that this project was going to be on our farm. And I like to think that maybe it's another step in being innovative, like I think our family has been right from the start. I mean, the history goes back to when Cornelius O'Brien bought the first land in our family in 1892, 60 acres, and the present land that the project is going to be started on was bought in 1899, and the land just kept coming with another 100 acres purchased in 1939. My dad and two uncles formed a partnership in 1956, and then Tom and I formed our partnership and actually bought our dad and uncles out in 1979. And along the way, we've all been involved in one way or another in the city of Fitchburg. Our grandfather Emmett was an assessor in the city of Fitchburg, going back into the 20s and 30s. And I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but we've all been involved in the city, and we think we've been involved in many ways. Tom and I hosted the dairy breakfast in 2003. We've served on different committees. We're getting involved in a big way with this project. We're really excited about it. The land stays in the family. It's going to stay for a fifth generation now. I won't live long enough to see the end of the project, but our children will. The land stays as agriculture. We're not producing corn and soybeans, but we're still producing a commodity. It's electricity. And so I'm proud to be part of that production. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Robert, and then Julia after that.
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Robert Owen. I live in Middleton, 1311 Middleton Street. I'm here to support the solar project. Good-sized solar projects like this one are economical and appropriate for Dane County as we move to lessen our reliance on fossil fuels. It's very important that we continue these efforts, and it's particularly good in this case that we're using this project to support a renewable rider project. I hope that continues, that there are other such projects around Dane County. I appreciate also the pollinator feature of this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Julia, do you want to speak? No. Okay. All right, great. All right, then I think that I just have some other people that are registering in support. I first have Julia Frada from Fitchburg, registering in support of this project. I have Bill Dunn from Fitchburg registering in support, and just an additional comment about the water runoff and needing conditions for that. I have Jonathan Hotstream from Madison registering in support. I have Don Peterson from Madison registering, I believe, in support. And Todd Montevideo from Madison registering in support as well. And so that's all of the public comments that I have, unless I missed something. All right, seeing nothing else, I will close the public hearing. Zach, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'll need to recuse myself from both of these items.
All right, great. Let's see. So, Sonia, do you want to do the staff report next?
So first, we have the conditional use permit, and then the second item on the agenda is the ADR, architectural design review for site and structural development. So the conditional use permit would allow utility use in the exclusive ag zoning district. So the zoning would not change, and the future land use would not change, meaning that it stays in the future ag and open space land use category, and we're not opening this up to other commercial development. So the conditional use permit would be limited to just that utility use as approved tonight if the Plan Commission does approve it. It is a 20 megawatt project. Just for scale, I noted in the staff report a couple other projects in the region that are being considered. At the Middleton Airport, there's a solar project that's 6 megawatts, and at the Dane County Airport, there's a project that's about 9 megawatts, and this one would cover 150 acres approximately and be done in 3 phases. I'm not sure if that was noted by the applicant earlier, but this would be the planned first phase, according to the application materials, about 6 or 7 megawatts, followed by the east side of Seminole Highway, 6 or 7 megawatts, and then finally the third phase closer to Lacey Road. And they did note this larger 150-foot setback. There's also a landscaping plan included in the packet where there are a large number of sort of evergreens and additional landscape screening here to provide a buffer for the other uses across the street, which are single-family residential homes. And then the applicants did sort of overview these other points to consider, but access to the site would be rather limited. They do plan to continue using the 2 farm accesses, 2 existing driveways off of Seminole Highway. There really aren't any staff. The application materials talk about maintenance staff coming 1 to 2 people a few times per month. They do comply with all of the exclusive ag zoning setbacks, and then in terms of the visual appearance, they talked about the 12-foot height of the solar arrays. The application also included some renderings of what those panels might look like from various angles along the public roadways, and then I also mentioned the screening. So the staff recommendation is for approval with 10 conditions. I'll go through them quickly. We do have condition number 2, which is required per statute in an exclusive ag zoning district. It says the Plan Commission has identified no conflicts with Chapter 91 state statutes. That's just the farmland preservation chapter, and the application did go through and talk about how they feel they're compliant with all of those sections. We have standard conditions 3 and 4 regarding stormwater, and Ag and Rural Affairs had an additional clarification on one of those items. Number 5 shall comply with all of the dimensional standards of the exclusive ag zoning district. Fence shall be maintained in the agricultural not style fence as proposed. They shall install and maintain the landscape screening as proposed along Lacey Road. Driveways require permits from City of Fitchburg Public Works staff, and they shall also work with Fitchburg Fire, EMS, and Public Works to make sure that there are appropriate turnaround locations on those longer driveways for public safety access. And number 10, at the time the project permanently ceases to operate, the permit holder shall restore the site to substantially the same condition as it existed prior to construction. And there was another recommended condition from Ag and Rural Affairs, so perhaps that report would be good next.
All right. Yeah, do you want to speak to what you talked about there, Ed?
Sure. So Ag and Rural unanimously recommended approval of this. There were a lot of questions, and we were satisfied with the answers to the questions. We wanted to add a condition to staff's recommendation here and also kind of beef one up a bit. Number 4 has to do with stormwater maintenance, and we wanted to make sure that that the applicant worked with Public Works staff to assure that there's going to be no increase in the amount of runoff from this, particularly to the south onto the Dunn property. We would think that that wouldn't be an issue given the type of plantings that they're going to have there, but you also do have the large panels, and there could be some speed coming off of those panels. So I don't know, Lisa, if you got a chance to kind of wordsmith that a little bit. No. Not as yet. So that's the intent anyhow, is just to make sure that there isn't any increase in runoff from the site from what there currently is. And then we recommended an 11th condition, which would be subject to staff approval, a maintenance plan for the plantings. And the concern there, of course, is the type of plantings that you're putting in, they're not going to be harvested, and you can't do a prescribed burn, so how do you maintain them over time so you don't have invasives or woodier stuff coming in there, which they don't want anyhow, but our understanding is that it would be mowed probably once per year and probably not more than that. I don't know whether that's what's needed, but, just something so that we know it's not going to get out of control over time.
All right. Anything else, Sonia? All right. Comments, thoughts? Wayne?
Ed, you and Mark both mentioned water coming off of the panels as a concern. I'm naive when it comes to solar farms. I've seen them. I think they're pretty unique. But is that a real concern with this many panels, like water, that much water coming off and abnormally affecting stormwater?
I wouldn't have thought so, because the way that they tilt from east to west is going to cause the drip lines to be not to the north and south, but rather to the east and west.
Gotcha.
If you're concerned about the water flowing to the south off the site, you would think that that wouldn't really happen. You'd also think that with these types of plantings, you're not going to have the kind of runoff that you would with corn and soybeans. But there was concern from the Dunn farm, and they certainly don't expect to have any additional runoff. And so it seemed fairly simple just to kind of beef up that condition to make sure that Public Works staff was satisfied that there wouldn't be. But yeah, it's hard for me to imagine why that would be a problem necessarily. And you don't have a constant drip line either, because
they're flat.
The panels, they move over the course of the day.
Yeah.
Somewhat south, since we're this far north, right?
Right. Do you want to speak to, I want to speak to.
So if we look at the site plan, the rows going northwest, so the rows of panels actually go from the north to the west, so straight down with the single axis tracker system, which basically means when the sun's highest in the sky, the panels are actually parallel with the ground versus when the sun's rising, they're facing towards the sun, sun's setting, they're facing towards the sun as well. So they rotate on that axis, on that single axis, if that makes sense.
So if it rains in the middle of the day, there's not going to be as much it's going to be pretty flat. And okay.
What happens if when the sun goes down? They just automatically go back to the east, wait for the sun to come up?
Yes, yeah.
How big do they normally, what's the average, Sonia was talking about the one at Dane County Airport and the Middleton Airport that are 6 megawatts. Is this a big one in comparison to most projects that you've done or do?
Sure.
Is this average or?
Yeah, so the short, I think it may be easier to put it in perspective of some of the other projects and elsewhere in Wisconsin as well. So some of the big ones, as we would consider big, are actually 300 megawatts. And so those have been proposed a little farther north of us outside of Dane County. This, in comparison, is 20 megawatts. The difference really is what we're able to do locally, right, and very close to load. This is at the bigger end of being able to do it in such a, what I'm going to call ideal location because of, the close proximity to load to businesses within Fitchburg that it may potentially serve. Versus doing it out in the open, middle of nowhere, you get significantly bigger.
It's it to carry that farther, yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Other questions at all?
I just have a question for staff. What I know was the water runoff was discussed in Ag and Rural Affairs. The O'Briens have complained about runoff at the farm for years. The landscape at this corner is going to change. It's going to change because of development on Seminole Highway at Lacey, and it's going to change because of the solar farm at the intersection. Do you think we need any holding tank or a holding pond, or is there something else that staff has to look at in reference to the water? They did discuss it in Ag and Rural Affairs. I heard the comments because I was there. One of the farmers brought up the water runoff problem. It's just more of a question. That's really all I've.
It's a good question, and unfortunately I can't speak to details. We do have our stormwater engineer on staff that reviews our erosion control and stormwater management permit, and we also have that reviewed by Dane County, and they're required to meet standards for runoff control and then quality control of the waters that are running off as well. So they'd be required to meet those standards. They wouldn't get their permit without it. And we also have that additional clarification from Ag and Rural that if it makes conditions worse, that would not be allowed, and they'll need to work with our staff on that.
Just, I guess I'm going to say, just bring it up. That's no problem. It's interesting because this project, as a lot of you know, this project is in District 4. Everything happens in District 4 because it's known to have the most land. So I did meet with MG&E. I met with EDF. I met with people involved. Very interesting project. Not only is it interesting, not only is it good for the city, but we can beat Sun Prairie and Middleton, and I love it. I really love it. I could be wrong, but I think this is the biggest solar farm in the state of Wisconsin, in the whole state.
Sure, and I could address that. For a very short time, it will be, if all built by the end of next year.
Well, tell the others not to build.
Why don't we build a bigger one?
It's interesting because this part I want to make loud and clear. And do we have staff? What road would education use and the schools use to look at this project? Would that be coming off of Seminole Highway? I know Lacey Road pretty well in the 30 years I've been out here. Would there be another access to a school bus going into this property, or is there another access that they could see this development, see this project?
So we're happy to do tours for schools. We do it all the time in terms of getting a school bus in there. Generally, we want to accompany them, but the access would be totally suitable for that.
No problem?
No, yeah.
No problem with that, okay. That, I think, is huge. I've heard some people talk about the environment. I've heard talk about, one person I did here at Ag and Rural Affairs talk about education. And I think it's huge for the city. It's huge for the neighbors. It's huge for the library. It's huge for education. it's just nice to see something come to the city of Fitchburg that another community doesn't have, you know, especially the size of this. I think I heard right, staff, it's a build out of 3 years, right?
3 phases.
Three?
Over 2 years.
2 years? That means Ed and I would be older when this happens, when it's built out, right? Yeah.
I will be.
Okay. I hear you. I think it's great. If you can think of an educational sign or something to put out there that I'm missing, make sure you come back and talk to the city.
Sure, and part of the goal is to do the educational kiosk at the entrance to where we would bring in tours and stop there. Is a good stopping point as well as from the trail viewing in, so.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Is there a sign or something that says?
Yes.
Is there gonna be something that?
Yep, and we do have a representative photo of, it's on that next one right there. So that second picture is a representative kiosk where you're basically describing what the project is, how it works, something where you're bringing school-aged kids into the site, you want to stop and explain it, that's the place to do it.
I remember seeing it. No, that's right, we do. I think it's a great project.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I know I got at least a handful of emails from residents that are in support of this beyond what people here tonight have said as well. So it's something that I think has a lot of support in the community.
I should note that there was a neighborhood meeting held, hosted by the developer and MG&E. And do you have any comments or maybe a summary of that neighborhood meeting to share?
Sure, I think it was very well attended. I think about 50 people turned out, and I think general support of the project. The few comments that we did get, we tried to address in part by instituting that landscaping plan that we're committed to maintaining as well at this point.
Rich?
Just want to point out, I'm looking at the topo, and it looks like this is one of the lower points. So I don't think we have to worry about water draining from here uphill down south.
And I believe that part of the reason why there's not more solar panels kind of on the corner of Lacey and Seminole in the middle there is to provide some possible water retention of some kind, I think. I don't know if that's entirely true, but yeah, kind of where you have that.
Sure, at the corner of, it was at the corner of Lacey and Seminole where Public Works asked us to stay back a little bit from for that very reason, as well as I think there was maybe some other planned improvements in the future there.
Yeah, we're doing an analysis right now of that whole area to figure out what are the needs and where can we provide more capacity and make sure that there's not more impact in there. So that is kind of another nice thing that they've kind of done as a response to hearing comments from staff and the community. Yeah, Tom?
Just one quick other question is, do you see a lot of MG&E trucks going in and out of this area, or they would have to check on this at all, or going there? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the public too as well, the power from this will go to the MG&E plant on PD.
Correct.
Right?
It is feeding back to that substation. Right. That's correct. In terms of traffic, long-term operations and maintenance, the short answer is no. It's generally a pickup truck coming in, and more than likely from our side of things once a month to check on things, make sure stormwater controls are in place, things look correct, that sort of thing.
All right. Anything else? All right. Someone want to do a motion of some kind?
I'll move to approve with the 10+1 condition.
And also editing number 4, I think.
Yeah, for conditional use permit, right? Yeah, CU 2333-20.
All right, so that was adding the 11th condition and also revising, I think it's number 4 as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll second.
All right. Any further comments at all? And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Anyone like to abstain?
Abstain.
Oh, all right, one abstention. Good. All right. ADR number for this project, 2652 South Seminole Highway. Anything further to add at all?
I don't think so, but
I don't
again,
expect
happy
you do.
to
Okay.
address any questions.
And
Any further-
I didn't list it in the staff report, but I would recommend the same conditions that you just approved for the ADR.
All right. Any further questions or comments?
Just from an ADR standpoint, I know one thing I was confused on that was clarified is the fencing that goes up is not for screening purposes. It sort of looks like that when you look at it, what we got in the memo, it doesn't screen it. It's what I would refer to as a woven wire fence. So it's really for the purpose of keeping,
No.
yeah, I would assume keeping
People and deer.
Wolves.
in deer. Yeah. Yeah. So it sort of looks like
Fair.
it screens, but it doesn't screen it. And that's why probably some of the landscaping is important up on Lacey Road.
And from what I remember, I think it's set up so that things like rabbits can get through. It's just the bigger animals that, for some reason might decide to jump on a panel, which would be bad.
Exactly. This is actually, it's commonly referred to as a deer fence. The folks who may be familiar, but idea is has bigger holes in it to let the smaller critters through.
Bees.
Maybe some bees. That would be great. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Make a motion to approve PRC 01-20 and ordinance 2020.
No. No, you need to be on F.
Ah! I was ready to go, sorry.
No, you're jumping
I make a
ahead.
motion to approve ADR 2652 with 10 plus 1 and 4 amended per staff.
All right. Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Anyone like to abstain?
I abstain.
All right. One abstention. All right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's approved. All right. Moving on to G. And
These are the panels
before we
at 12.
do the public hearing, do you want to say anything from staff?
Public hearing's fine first.
Want to do the public hearing first? All right. So I will open the public hearing. I've got a few people here. First is Rita Henricks, and after that will be Robert Proctor.
Good evening. I'm speaking tonight for Jay Hockmuth, Sue Easterday, Ben Lindberg, and myself. Thanks for the opportunity to offer comments on the draft comprehension plan dated 1/21/20. Staff should be commended for their work on this draft plan, getting it ready for consideration at this hearing. This draft contains many provisions that will serve the city well in the next 10 years, especially the wording on pages 5.3 and 5.6 that's in Resolution R 239-19. This wording is essential for assuring elected officials in Fitchburg, not appointed officials, have the final say on the need for and the content of the comprehensive plan amendments. The reason the Plan Commission should vote tonight against taking this wording out of the draft plan is in Attachment 1. In summary, there's no case law that says the council can't have final say. Instead, state law says local government is required to outline the process for amending its comp plan in the implementation element of the plan. In addition to the legal support for final say wording, there's widespread public support. In the past 2 weeks, more than 66 city residents have signed a petition asking the council to have final say on the comp plan amendments. Given these considerations, please do not vote to remove any final say wording or add a poison pill wording to it. The 1/21/20 draft plan also contains several provisions that need to be revised and several that need to be added to assure issues implementing the current comprehensive plan that surfaced in the 2018 and the 2019, that they don't occur again. Attachment 3 contains the revisions we believe are appropriate, the most significant being on page 4-15, there are 3 parcels on map 4-2 that are surrounded by a red line to denote parcels with a potential land use change in map 4-2 of the draft comp plan dated 12/17/19. In 4-2 of the comp plan adopted by the council in 2020, these 3 parcels should be surrounded by a red line to document that the land use for them was changed. In addition, on page 416, 3 more notes should be added at the end of the section entitled Future Land Use Map Notes. These 3 notes are needed to establish conditions applicable to each of these parcels. On page 416, wording should be added to require the net acreage of our parcel be used to calculate maximum number of units allowed on it. On page 5.5, the first paragraph should be modified to assure a major plan update can occur when deemed necessary by the council because it will provide a net benefit. Tonight, we also like to offer a schedule that we hope will be used to review and respond to the comments submitted by the public on the 1/21/20 draft plan before the council adopts the comp plan update. We believe an appropriate way for the council to respond to written comments submitted on the 1/21/20 draft plan is detailed in attachment 4. The first step is for the staff to prepare by 3/6/20 a response to comments, RTC, on the 121 draft. This RTC can be presented to the council on 3/10 after the public hearing is held on the draft plan recommended by the Plan Commission. Thank you for considering these comments.
All right, thank you, Rita. All right, Robert.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm Robert Proctor. I'm representing the Realtors Association. And as you know, we've taken a lot of interest in the comprehensive plan and are very supportive. We support the current draft and are very complimentary to city and to the city, the elected officials, the staff, and the Planning Commission. We appreciate all the how much staff has made itself available. Wanted to emphasize a couple points in the plan. We agree with almost everything in the plan, but it does set up certain issues that are going to come up that we've seen before. It's interesting how few people are here, as so many of us have been through some of the more difficult meetings. But according to this plan, it's projected, I'm looking on page 2A3, I'm on the wrong one, sorry, 2A4, I believe, that the projected annual units for the state, for the city going from 2020 to 2040 is 245 units. That's, I assume, in order to keep up with the population growth of Fitchburg. In 2019, my understanding is there were 88 single-family permits pulled. So they built 88, so you're projecting 224 or 245 units each year. Right now, the median home value, according to the plan in Fitchburg, is $287,000 approximately, and the Dane County comparison is $242,000. So to buy a home in Fitchburg is $45,000 more than the average outside of Fitchburg. So what you're going to see for the next 10 years is the need or the growth or the projected growth of 245 units, but not being able to keep up with it if we're going to do 88 permits a year, and there's going to be that knot to untie. I'd also point out in the report that it says that the vacancy rate for renting is 1.2%, and that the projected rate that you would like to see is 5 to 7%. So, and I think that the city has done some really good things lately. In Terra Vesa and with the Viridian one, looking for other means to get the density necessary in order to try to close that gap. And it's easy to talk about it tonight, in broad brush, where we can all agree there's an affordability problem, there's going to be a need for units, but it's going to come down the road. I would note that the comments that were just made talk about how to figure net and gross acres out. Well, that's going to go to density, and there's always going to be the need for density and figuring out a way to make density work so that the concerns of the public as to traffic and all the other issues are addressed, but that you can also meet these levels. Otherwise, Fitchburg is going to become a community that people can't afford to live in. So I'm really supportive of everything in here. I'm just noting that, we've all know that when it comes time to address and close that gap on units, it seems as if that's when we get a lot of people to turn up on the project. But when we see it here and we see it coming, there doesn't seem to be as much, interest in it, and which is understandable. So again, we support the comp plan as it is, and we truly appreciate all of the efforts that you all have made and the ability to work with you during this process. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I also have Jim Wheeler from Fitchburg registering, doesn't say if it's support or opposition, but comments that he supports language in the comp plan that articulates that the common council has the final say in changes. I know that I got a lot of feedback from emails from people kind of saying the same thing. I don't know if they send that to everyone planning commission, but I know that I heard from quite a few people that live in the community that kind of said the same thing. That is what I have for public comments for now. So I will close the public hearing and turn over to Sonia.
So I passed around a printed memo. This is very similar, and I'll bring it up on the screen here for public viewing as well. This is very similar to what was handed out at the December Plan Commission meeting. And it just summarizes the main changes made to the plan. Here at the Plan Commission level, we've gone through pages of the draft plan line by line. We've read the verbiage verbatim for different policies. So rather than starting with that type of presentation again for you all here, I've just provided the summary memo and we can walk through that. And then if there's discussion, we can get into specifics in more detail. But here we are at one of the last steps, culmination of the efforts over the last half year or so. We've talked about the comprehensive plan at over 30 public meetings, including the Plan Commission, the Common Council, Committee of the Whole, other city committees, outside agencies, and as well as at public listening sessions. We held the 5 neighborhood meetings with relatively good turnout. We hosted 2 online surveys to hear from the public, and we also held our open house in November, in which this room was full, and as well as through testimony at our various public meetings. At the November open house, I identified 5 general overarching themes. So just summarizing those again for you here today. I think the plan could be characterized as 1, continuing our generally planned and orderly growth. 2, focusing on healthy, balanced neighborhoods. 3, maintaining our rural character through ag preservation, perhaps enhancing agricultural uses and limiting other rural development. 4, focusing on redevelopment and improvement of existing neighborhoods and commercial nodes. And finally, increasing the flexibility in our administrative procedures as we implement the plan through zoning and land division and things like that. One of the policies, for example, that increases the flexibility would be that biannual amendment process rather than the previously strict one time per year, as well as other policy additions and procedural clarifications. So the memo that I passed around has 8 main changes identified, so I'll just walk through that. And then on the attachments, I've copied the actual policies throughout the plan that have been edited, and those show up here in this memo as red lines, because when you look at the draft plan online, it's now been stripped of the red line version because it's its final draft. So you'll see all of that in black text here, but you can refer to the memo to see the red line changes that we've discussed over time. And then finally, that's attachment A, and then attachment B here in this blue table are some very minor technical updates that have been made to the plan since the draft was published on January 7th, made by planning staff, and these are just some errors corrected or additional information gaps that needed to be filled in. So we would recommend, if the Plan Commission takes action on the resolution and ordinance tonight, that you also specify that these changes be incorporated into the council version. So I can go through those as well. So back to page 1. As you know, the main, major, and most visual change of the plan is the reorganization of plan content. Again, the goal here was to simplify and make the information perhaps more readable to a variety of audiences and accessible. Overall, the plan was reduced in length by about 70 pages from 274 to 178. Major change number 2 were 4 parcel-specific future land use amendments. 2 of them are within the existing urban service area boundary, so those would be more analogous to a minor future land use change like we do on the annual basis. And then 2 were outside of any planned development area for the city. Those 2 include the parcel that we've talked about for Edgewood College and their athletic complex, the 40 acres at the corner of Lacey and Seminole. This is identified in the draft land use map as institutional land use. This would enable an urban service area amendment to be, application to be prepared, submitted to the city for consideration, and then CARPC and the DNR, followed by their entitlement process, including rezoning and any other permits that would be required in order to construct the athletic complex. Number 2 would be the Oregon School District, and this is at the far southern boundary of the city. This is the 107-acre parcel acquired by Oregon School District for future use as a middle school. This has also been identified on the draft land use map as institutional land use, and it would follow the same process in order to be considered for development that we just reviewed, first with the urban service area application and amendment approvals, and then your entitlement process. These were reviewed by the commissions at multiple meetings, and staff was directed to include these in the packet. Promega, this parcel is one of the minor land use amendments within the urban service area that we've discussed a few times, and I'll bring up a map too if necessary. But this is the 9.5 acres along Gunflint Trail in Fitchburg Center here, and the minor land use change would be to change from low-density residential and medium-density residential to industrial commercial, and that would allow rezoning requests to be submitted to allow Promega to pursue another biotech medical research facility. Item number, letter D, we talked about in December. This was brought forward by Milestone Democratic School, a charter school that's looking to locate on Index Road on the northern part of our urban area, just off of Fish Hatchery. And the minor change in land use would be from industrial general to business in order to allow the school to pursue their zoning change to construct the school or to utilize an existing building for the school. The Plan Commission supported this change at their December meeting. Big change number 3 is that we differentiated and defined a minor amendment versus a major update. This was a procedural clarification to make sure that we had that sort of document backing so that we are all on the same page. A minor amendment is defined as those changes for parcel-specific land uses within the urban service area or specific action items that don't affect general citywide growth policies. Minor amendments will follow the biannual process twice per year with the procedures identified in the plan. A major update, on the other hand, is a major undertaking in terms of resources, as well as in theoretically the public input that you would want to receive and the types of information and resources you'd want to review. So statutorily, we have to do this at least once every 10 years. Just like in the past, we've always had the ability to do it more frequently, and that's been clarified in the plan, as well as providing some general guidelines or triggering mechanisms, as they've been termed, to help the Plan Commission, the public, and the council decide whether such a major undertaking is warranted. Major change number 4 is allowing minor amendments twice per year instead of once, allowing some more flexibility to consider development projects as they come forward that might align better with the construction season. This is something that's been requested out of various committees and groups over the past 10 years. Number 5, we've provided guidelines for review of minor amendments. These are in the implementation chapter, and it's a set of criteria that's just meant to encourage objective decision-making and to provide a guide so that the Plan Commission and the Council are looking at the same types of maybe planning principles to guide decisions. It doesn't tie your hands in any way, but provides that information as guidance. And number 6, we just heard a little bit about this one through the public testimony. This is regarding procedures for adopting an amendment to the plan. The city attorney's opinion for the past 10 years has been that the Plan Commission and the council must agree, or in other words, the council needs to act on a plan amendment recommended to them by the Plan Commission. Her opinion has been that only technical changes can be made by the council when adopting that amendment, and that if it's something more substantive that affects private property rights, that would go back to Plan Commission until the two bodies agree. In previous drafts, this red language was included in order to clarify that past practice. It would have read that the Common Council may make non-substantive technical changes to the recommended Plan Commission version of the amendment. A substantive change affects the use of land or makes a qualitative change in the plan. After the council reviewed resolution R-239-19, I believe it was at their December 10th council meeting, that was approved by the council, and it directed staff to change the language in red shown on the screen to the language shown in blue. And it sort of reverts back to the language as it was, which reads, the Common Council may make changes to the recommended Plan Commission version of the amendment and order publication of the ordinance adopted by council. So while this blue language wouldn't necessarily change the city attorney's opinion, the state statute hasn't changed, and therefore she's reading it in the same way. It does allow the council the flexibility to disagree with the city attorney's opinion. Major change number 7 are numerous, and those are the revisions to the goals, objectives, and policies throughout the plan. And those are what's shown in red text below. And I won't read through all of them unless there are questions, because we have done that in December, but I will highlight a few of them. Item number 1 here is just an example of some clarifications made to various housing policies that were, like we were in the past, going to promote a variety of housing options within neighborhoods, and then added this red text, including those that provide for diversity in cost, tenure, and type. We have a number of policies regarding availability of land for industrial development. So that's items 6 and 7, just to point out a couple where we clarified that we'll respond to market demand for new commercial and industrial developments through the review and consideration of these developments when they're proposed. This was one of Alder Clouder's recommendations. And then number 7, ensuring an adequate supply of land for industrial development, as well as sort of working with the city's strategic economic development plan, City in Motion, as in tandem with the comprehensive plan's policies. And I wanted to point out a few a group of new transportation policies to address sort of changing technologies. Number 13 is regarding ride-sharing options in the city and staying current with various trends, including electric vehicles, and perhaps encouraging, for example, more charging stations for electric vehicles throughout the city. Similarly, number 14, implementing bicycle sharing facilities in appropriate locations. And others, including number 16 here, which is including bus rapid transit if rail-based options are not fully feasible. And then number 17 is one of the bigger or more unique policy changes that was added, and it reads, support exploration of development of an airport facility in an appropriate location in the city. So we talked about that in December, and we can address more questions as needed. And then another one of the big ones is the last one on the list. And this is really the policy that was crafted in response to the wedding barn request. And it previously read that we would restrict any development outside the urban service area to that which is consistent with that rural residential development policy that we have. And then we added the red language that reads, or uses which may be allowed in agricultural zoning districts that are integral to and which maintain the rural landscape and are supported by the city's ag plan. So this would enable some exploration of other ag uses without changing zoning. So we'd be looking at small lot ag or exclusive ag zoning districts, but perhaps allowing some of these more unique rural tourism opportunities. So sort of the summary of the items we've already talked about, and I can just open it up to discussion and questions.
All right. Questions, thoughts, comments? Rich?
I've got a comment, yeah. I'm still really bugged with this thing about the changes. The way I see it, and I channel some former members of the commission, the council is rooted in politics. We've seen in the past where they flip-flop from year to year. We have elections every year now. There's the chance that we could go every year with a different change. The commission, on the other hand, is rooted in policy. We're not changing anything other than for these major revisions, like the 5 or 10-year ones. So I would like to see the non-substantive technical put back in and undo what the blue that was added.
Yeah, Ed.
I agree with Rich, and I got some notes with regard to that. I went back and took a look at a memo that Mark Sewell wrote to Tony Roach in 2009. And this is something that Valerie has referred back to also. And one of the things that he said that I thought was interesting is, while council members may very understandably consider this statute to undermine the power of the elected body in favor of the power of a non-elected appointed body, historically within the state statutes, the Plan Commission holds substantial authority over the city planning function. For example, the old master plan under Wisconsin statutes is to be enacted or amended solely by the Plan Commission without review of the Common Council. That's what occurred before there was the comprehensive planning process in the state. This was entirely within the purview of the Plan Commission. And what that change in the comprehensive plan does is it gives the elected officials some control over the process too. But, you know, I agree with Rich. I think there needs to be some balance with regard to that. But the point is that there is precedent for Plan Commission control over the city planning function. Our former and current city attorneys agree that for the comp plan to be amended, both bodies must agree. Now, if the council feels that they have the authority to make that change on their own, that they're within their rights to do that, I guess that's up to them when this comes to them. But I'm with Rich. I think we should send it back with the blue language, or the, was it the red language? The original language. Red. Instead of the blue.
Zach?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I get concerned that, you know, our lawyers are not supportive of this, and considering, you know, that whole election and changeover, not having that consistency in planning makes me nervous.
Time you want to go?
Well, I don't agree with anything I've heard on this topic. No question about it. I mean, let's look back what we just discussed, and there's a ping pong match between the city council and it seems to be the Plan Commission. And it's not good for the city. It's not good to have arguments between the Plan Commission and city council. That's nothing I'm looking for. We don't need that. And with this language, that's what you're going to get. If you haven't seen it by now, you're going to see it in the future. And I want to point out something that, you know, the city attorney's been wrong before. Read the paper. And the other thing is, it's not, it's what's good for the city. I'm going to say that. I'd like to say it 10 times, but I won't. It's what's good for the city. It's not what's good for the city council or the mayor or me. It's what's good for the city. And that's the bottom line here. This thing is, it's not to take, I know some of you up here feel this, I just feel in my blood, that it's not to take power away from a Plan Commission. That's not where I'm going. It's to benefit the city. And we've seen that I think we've seen that a number of times. We've heard from a lot of neighbors. I think we just heard from one neighbor tonight that read, and there was a number of people that in their own subdivision said it should be changed. I think if you actually took a referendum on this topic, I think you'd be very surprised what you'd hear. It could be wrong, but I think if this took a referendum on it, and I think you'd see that the city council, whoever it is, whoever's elected, would have the jurisdiction over this. The other thing is, when this was done 10 years ago, I've said this before, I'm sorry, I don't mean to repeat it again, I really don't. But that was not the intent to get this going between the two bodies. The mayor at the time signed it, and it was that the city council would have the final say. And since then, obviously, we've had new elected officials, we've had new mayors, we've had new city attorneys. One city attorney retired, and isn't it interesting that the next city attorney followed in the footsteps on some things, not everything, on some things, which I understand. I understand that. But, you know, I would hope you'd just look into this, and it's really not to be a ping pong match. It's what's good for the city, and I think some of us are just not overlooking it that way, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, I'd agree with Tom. I think that, I disagree with, in an ideal world, yeah, this policy would be, or this group would be a policy making, and politics would kind of stay with council, but in reality, that doesn't happen. For the most part, but I've seen it happen both ways. I think it's a little bit utopian thing. To me, kind of the next step after hopefully we pass something tonight is to get public comment. We've gotten a lot of public comment on this already. We've got a bunch of people that signed a petition. We've had people come into the meetings. And I think it's pretty clear what the public comments are going to be on this piece. And so I guess I also don't really understand going against all that public comment that is going to come right now when you know that that's in there. I understand the need and the concern. I think, obviously the laws aren't written very well, and there's no lawsuits that have been out there that can really say one way or the other. But, when I look at this, I think that there's enough confusion, there's enough feedback from the public to say and to know what at least the majority of people on council have voted towards already. To me, I guess I don't understand changing it back when you know what that feedback is, where the council is going to end up. It's just kind of doing it to just kind of almost looks like, forget you, council, which I don't think is the intent, but some people maybe go that way with it. To me, I guess I would say keeping it to blue seems to make more sense to me when you kind of know what the end game is long term. And it's one of those weird things where nothing else, no other body, nowhere else does a committee, a commission, anyone have kind of that authority over the council. So maybe, some people would argue this is more important than public works or parks or the library or EMS services or whatever it might be, but I guess everything we do is important. There's a lot of important things, so that's just kind of my opinion. We go Lane and then Rich, since Lane hasn't a chance yet.
I tend to agree with Ed and Rich. I feel like Leonidas, and we're like the 300, the 7 of us up here that are non-elected officials are the 300 taking on everyone else. And to me, it seems like it should be like a balance. That's kind of what the plan's in place for, right? You have elected versus the appointeds. As the electeds change, the appointeds are always there kind of keeping it steady, in my opinion. I definitely like the blue language, I like the red language better because these are long-lasting decisions we make. One of the things we always lean on Ed for is, what happened, and Tom too, what happened 20 years ago when this decision was made? Why did that happen? Those are important things that, new plan commissioners, and as we change over, I mean, we're not all going to be here forever. As those things happen, we need that kind of experience and education. I just like the idea of it, like the Senate and the House. They have to match. They have to, our government was built on that. Why would we change this? It's my 2 cents.
Rich?
Well, I don't think we're being confrontational. I think we're being perceived as such, but I think it's actually the other way around. If we look back at the Stoner Prairie problems, Ed had a compromise that the city turned down. The city came back with something. The eventual project would have worked with Ed's compromise, but the city didn't want to accept it. They wanted to be the one, the impression I got was they wanted to dictate what the rules were going to be.
When you say
I
city,
think
you mean council, right?
The council, yeah. This is a case of the squeaky wheel getting the oil, and you guys have constituents that talk to you and complain, and I think that's what's driving your decisions. A lot of times is what you're hearing from the people that live in your district. But there are 3 other districts too that we can't ignore. And again, just to reiterate, I think that this is policy. This needs to have some kind of continuity beyond the council's turnovers.
Done?
Rich, I can't let that one go by. Not at all. I put a lot of sweat and tears into the North Stoner Prairie. I answered a heck of a lot of phone calls with the North Stoner Prairie. I talked to a lot of people about the North Stoner Prairie. My backyard faces the North Stoner Prairie. It's obvious you're not listening to the neighbors. The neighbors have a big say in this, and I listened to the neighbors. They didn't want the high density. The high density was not for this parcel, for this piece. Maybe in another part of Fitchburg, okay. We see it on Sign Road, and I wasn't part of that. That was already built. The fact of the matter is you do have to listen to the neighbors. There's no question about it. I think the neighbors pay the bills. I think the neighbors have a lot to say. And as an elected official, you don't always have to agree with them. I get that. I really do. But it's obvious some of you up here have not listened to any neighbors in this city for the past several years, it seems like.
Yeah, Ed.
I think one of the reasons why plan commissions are intended.
Yeah, no, he's good.
On?
Yeah, you're on.
Are intended by the
Yeah,
state
different mic.
to have some say in this process is that we're not elected officials. And as a result, when we identify NIMBYism, we have a better ability to say, look, this is not in the best interest of all of Fitchburg. This is not in the long-term interest of Fitchburg. And that's where I think elected officials get caught up. And I understand that. That's your job to represent your constituents. But there are constituents all over the city that are affected by what the city does, whether we're planning in an efficient manner, to keep control over property taxes. Those things are important. And I just think it shouldn't be that easy to flip-flop back and forth the way the council has done over the past couple of years. And frankly, since 2009, we haven't even had any issues like this until the past couple of years. Right. And I think we've got people on council that talk to people on plan commission and try to see if we can get on the same page, and other people that have no interest whatsoever in doing that. And that's unfortunate. But I think that that's a big part of what's happening here, and I think that's what Rich is saying, and I agree with him.
Can I ask, what was the vote when the city went for the change?
I believe 5-3 would be my guess,
Sounds right to me.
if everyone was here anyway. Yeah, I guess I still don't understand why this board should have more authority than a Board of Public Works, or library, or EMS, or somewhere else.
So state statute says.
Finance. No.
You can choose to read it differently, but
Right.
we're citizen members, we're not elected officials. So I feel like we should take our guidance from staff, and that includes, in this case, the city attorney. So if the politicians believe that they don't have to follow what our attorney has to say, then that's the decision that you can make when it gets to you, I guess. But it doesn't mean that we need to recommend that. I mean, that's what it comes down to, I believe. I'm not gonna go against what the city attorney says. And if you guys decide to do that, it's your decision. You understand my viewpoint,
Yeah,
as a citizen
I don't
member,
necessarily agree, but yeah.
No,
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Unless we want to discuss this particular issue more.
I don't know if anything else has.
There was one other thing I wanted to note, and this is with regard, it's on page 453 of the packet, I think. It's the number in the middle. It's the minor amendment review guidelines. It's page 161 of 182 or 453. Yeah, right. The third bullet down, one of the review guidelines is development resulting should be consistent with the physical character of the surrounding neighborhood. I think we should incorporate language that references the neighborhood plan there also. So it should say physical character of the surrounding neighborhood and in keeping with the neighborhood plan. And I think here, we haven't had this issue recently, but we've certainly had it in the past where you have one type of use that builds first in a neighborhood plan. And then other uses that are allowed in that neighborhood plan come forward and the people that are already there don't like it. And my concern here is if you have a situation where you have a neighborhood plan that calls for mixed use and all the single family develops first, and then someone wants to come in and put in the multifamily that was planned, the argument's gonna be, well, the multifamily doesn't fit the physical character of the surrounding neighborhood. So if we could make that change, I think that would be a plus.
And I think that would even speaks a little bit to the Stormwater Prairie neighborhood plan that was changed. It wasn't the original plan. I think that's what some people had a problem with, is that the original plan had gotten changed. They didn't feel like they had been notified appropriately, but it wasn't what originally was planned. So I think I'm talking about neighborhood planning, the importance of that and following with that, because I think people, both developers or residents, see a neighborhood plan and that's kind of their expectation. So I think that makes sense to have that kind of additional clarification.
I think it might have prevented that from having happened in the first place. Yep. Other than that, I appreciate the work that Sonia, that you guys have done on this. I went through a lot of the things that we discussed at the last meeting, and they seem to have been addressed, so I'm happy with the rest, and I didn't find anything else.
Zach?
Yeah, I guess just some minor things that I saw, at least in the draft, so some spelling and stuff like that, but on page 308 total.
The packet.
Where it says KW, that should be KWH.
Okay.
And then on the last line, it says pounds of coal. I'm assuming that's supposed to be pounds of coal.
Okay.
And then on page, let's see, 323. It looks like that policy on the bottom is cut off.
1.2.2.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a couple more. 334. That first chart is empty. And then,
Oh, and actually, I see there is a name for that Oregon Elementary School, if you want to put that in.
Oh,
oh,
great.
nice.
Yep.
Forest Edge.
What is it?
Forest Edge Elementary.
I should note on that related point, in the resources chapter, there are a few blanks missing on items like water supply.
Okay, that was my next one.
Yep, and we're waiting for some public works staff
Okay.
on that, but we don't anticipate that that changes any policy direction or anything. It's just some fill-in-the-blank information.
That was my
Those
other
are
one.
those?
So,
Okay.
yeah, I was like, I got
Good
one
eyes.
empty.
All right, Tom.
I got a couple of things. First of all, I want to go back to what we've been discussing here from the beginning here in reference to this, the Common Council and Plan Commission. It just seems to me, and I'm not looking at anybody up here, so I'm not looking at anybody. It seems to me we could fill this room with people from the city of Fitchburg against a topic like high density. I'm just making this up, and there's a lot of you up here sitting that wouldn't go along with the residents. They'd say, nope, I'm doing it my way. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm doing it my way. Well, just because of that, I want to vote on this as far as this language goes. You vote for it or vote against it. You vote for the red, that's okay, no problem. I'm voting for the blue. I'm voting that the city council has jurisdiction and making it clear what's best for the city. Not what's best for me, what's best for the mayor, it's what's best for me. But I think we should vote on this, and people can stand up for what they think then. Number two, I do have a couple things here. The first one is I have a little concern about Oregon schools. Oregon schools has 107 acres. They need 10. It's interesting. If you take 107 minus 10, I'm just saying, Mayor, the 107 acres they need, if they have 10 acres they need, what if they want to sell the other acres? Or say they want to get rid of acres? I don't think anybody's thought of that. Edgewood has 40 acres. It's not quite as large. Oregon has 107 acres. If they use 10 acres, say they use 25 acres, whatever. The other acreage, we don't have anything in here for checks and balance. Tell me, Sonia, if I missed something, where they could sell it, or they could unload it. And I just had some concern over that.
I had the same concern when I initially saw that it was 107 acres for a middle school. I did attend a planning conference recently where there was a talk given by a school district planning consultant, and they provided some standard metrics that school districts are using now, where they actually do look for much larger acreages than what the actual school site needs. So Terra Vesta, I think, is a unique example in the eyes of a school district and what they usually plan for and look for, because it is a smart code area. I think the Terra Vesta Elementary School is 12 acres, but then it's adjacent to a 10-acre area dedicated for parkland. So in total, that's 20. And that's still smaller, as I understand it, to what they normally look for an elementary school. Middle school's bigger, high school's bigger. I don't have a lot more detail or sort of citations for you on that right now. It is one thing that if the Oregon School District wanted to talk to that specifically, perhaps they would appear at a public meeting and give us that information. And I just want to note as well that it is designated on the draft land use map as institutional. So in order to change, to allow residential development or anything else, you'd have to go through amendment process.
And in the intergovernmental agreement, I know, talking with Oregon, they will only allow it for school facilities, any kind of extension of urban services. So if for whatever reason they got it changed to not be institutional, the Village of Oregon would still say, no, take a hike, we're not providing water and sewer to that, so too bad.
You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
That's,
And I don't know, I know preliminarily they want to put a bunch of like fields, for athletic fields out there as well. I don't know how much of that I'm supposed to say, but.
the other one I have is, okay, no, I appreciate that, you know. The other one I have is this. The city of Fitchburg for the past 10 years, and probably beyond that, well, let's just use 10 years, because that's when this plan, we're going to say expired or changed, whatever we're in the midst of. For the past 10 years, the city of Fitchburg has said, we are going to build along the rail line. We need business along the rail line. We're going to preserve the rail line. For those of you who don't know, and I'm going to be short with history, there was 2 rail lines in the city of Fitchburg at one time. There was 2 of them off of Scion Road. The Chicago Northwestern, the Hiawatha used to run on that line. It used to go from Chicago to the city of Madison. We only have one line now. There's only one line out there. But the city continued to talk about business off the rail line. We do today. There's no business on the rail line for the city of Fitchburg right now. It's in the Village of Oregon. It's called Lycon. I had something to do with that. But Lycon is in their business park, and they're taking trucks off our road to put aggregate down to Oregon so Lycon can build their cement plant. Every crossing in the city of Fitchburg, for the most part, we have a few crossings that aren't gated and lighted. The average cost for gates and lights is $225,000. The average price. So if I want to put gates and lights at Irish Lane, it's probably $225. In Burn Road, it's $225. Anyhow, we've talked about this rail line. And some of you, I think, know where I'm going. But we have an individual that has kind of changed course, met with the Village of Oregon, and I'm going to read it to you. This would be the property across from the school. I'm amazed that nobody wants to put this in the comp plan. It's a property and a piece of property that would be great for manufacturing place, plastic company, 200 jobs. We don't have it. Anyhow, this piece of property butts up to Layman's. They're next to the property that I've talked about before. And what I want to do here is put it in more as a study plan. Sonia doesn't have to tell me. It hasn't seen the light of day. It hasn't seen a neighborhood plan. But it reads as follows for the public. Please consider adding parcels of land south of County Trunk Highway M, north of Oregon, east of the rail line, and west of County Trunk MM. Approximately 130 That just gives you the acreage. 1 acre into a study plan. The Village of Oregon, this is the part you want to hear. Since I last talked about this, it's changed. The Village of Oregon is willing to cooperate in this effort to determine if it's a win-win solution, if possible, with Oregon extending utilities into the city of Fitchburg. I do believe, and Mayor, you can help me, that the village president has changed down there?
I think it's still Jeannie.
That's what I'm talking about, I'm sorry.
That's the only
She's
person I've
been there
talked
for a
to
while?
is Jeannie.
Okay. She has met with a number of people, and have you heard any different? No, this isn't fair, I'm sorry. I want to at least send this down to you, I'm sorry. I just want to send this down to you. I'm talking obviously more of a study proposal or a study plan than anything else, but have you heard anything from Oregon in reference to this partial, you know what I'm talking about, them willing to work with Fitchburg?
I have heard zero that they would be willing to do that. No one has sent me anything
Nothing lately?
or
Okay.
called me or anything.
That's fair, that's fair, that's fair. The person that owns the lands in the audience, could you come forward and could you tell us, your attorney or somebody next to you, what you know about Oregon? Seeing that you're here and you own the land, can you tell us, not hearsay, but can you just give us an idea of what you've been told or what Oregon has told you since we last talked?
Sure. I put my land on for sale, for listing, and I have given to KJK, real estate agency, and Jason is one of my realtor. So he went and talked to the Oregon people. I think Jeff Lou, and there's another lady, I think the new planner or something. I don't know her name, but he went to talk to them, and they said, like Tom said, we're willing to cooperate with Fitchburg if they are going to put the property in the comprehensive plan, or do something about the property, like putting a study or something, something to do with this. Like, especially they said a comprehensive plan, but they said if they don't want to put in a comprehensive plan, at least they start something with start studying about it or talking about it or something like that. So they were supposed to be here today, Jason and Carrie, who went and talked to them, but they're not here today, but they're going to be probably here tomorrow to talk to you guys, and with the council and everything. And they have firsthand, and I didn't have a chance to talk to them. I didn't go myself personally there, but my realtor went there, and they told me that. And I had several meetings with my realtors, and that's what they told me.
Question, at this point in the reference to this land, you're not asking for TIF money, correct?
No, I'm not
None
asking for TIF
whatsoever.
money at all,
So if somebody came to you tomorrow or next week and said that they would put a manufacturing plastic plant on your property with 200 jobs, would you accept it?
I would love to accept that.
I mean, we're not talking about, and I'm trying to make this clear, we're not talking about apartments here, we're not talking about condos right now, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about the lands on the rail line, and the city has talked about the rail line. If the city, this is an opportunity to put Fitchburg on the map and on the rail line, and if we don't do it now, you'll wait another 10 years, and good luck in the future, because it won't be in the plan.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it won't be in the plan. And yes, this is in my district. Yes, we've talked about the rail line. Yes, here's a piece of property that if some of you want to ask the owner of the land, Any questions, ask her. She's right here.
They even have 3 offers right now for a different, one was, I think, auto car dealer, and there was another offer they have on the land. So they all, I mean, I had, when I was enlisting, I had a 2 offer for the residential and commercial. But right now, when they are listing it, they already have 3 offers on it. That's what they told me, and I said, hey, you guys have to talk to the city, or you guys have to talk to Oregon in order to approve this. So some of the offer doesn't even require city well and septic and everything. I mean, they can work on well and septic. That doesn't even require city utilities. So so that's why they went and talked to the Oregon. I said, you know, it's not even required utilities. Can we just develop that? They said, you know, we really wanted to extend our utilities there. That's what they heard from Oregon, that they really want to extend their utilities to this property because it's on the borderline and everything. If the Fitchburg is willing to shake hand or whatever, you know, whatever the agreement you guys have, borderline agreements with them.
Thank you.
And also, I think they talked to some member of city here. I think they're going to talk to other people too, but they talked to other, and they are also willing to work with them, with the Oregon and everything too. Yeah.
The conversation, thank you.
Welcome.
The conversation I had with Mike Grace, he's a city administrator for Oregon, and he told me, he just said, Tom, unless it's in the plan, obviously we won't service it. If it's in the plan, we could look at it, but if it's not in your plan, we could service it. This, as I stated, is across the street from the school, right on the rail line. I'm not, unless, Sonia, you can think of another way, I just said a study plan due to the fact that it hasn't seen its day in court. I understand that, I get that, I'm totally on board with that. Unless there's something I'm missing, the opportunity is there for the city, as far as I'm concerned. We talk about this school across the street. The school is going across the street. In 10 years, I won't be sitting here. But we're talking about a development of a school across the street and a development across the street here that obviously I think would benefit the city, and it's along this rail line. I pound in the rail line because that's what we've heard. I can name the people in City Hall that have talked to others about a rail line and development on the rail line, and here's an opportunity to do it. And if we don't do it, I sure hope people at City Hall keep their mouths shut. Because it's really misleading the public. You guys can tell me what you think about it.
Tom, I have
I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
just to clarify.
Sure.
You're in favor of potentially developing here, but you're concerned that the Oregon School District might sell off some of their land to develop across the street, that those two things don't seem to.
Two separate issues. No.
Yeah, I know, but they are.
Two separate issues I just raised. If you're talking about, okay, let me back up the boat here. I know exactly, no, I hear where you're coming from. The school has this many acres and they only need this many. My question on the school was, are you going to sell it for something else? I'm protecting the city, Ed. That's all I meant, okay? This, I think, has its own day in court. This is across the street on the rail line. The school's not on the rail line. The school is across the street, as you know the area. Two separate issues.
Okay.
And just because I haven't heard anything, you sent an email to Mike and Jeannie, just, hey, is there new information, anything you want to tell me? Hopefully I'll know by tomorrow night, but I've not heard anything different. Sonia, I don't know if you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the last information we saw was a written statement from the Village of Oregon that they would not consider extending services to any other properties besides the school.
I think that's changed. Did you send that, Mayor?
I sent him an email.
That's fair.
So
No, that's,
we'll see. Hopefully they get back to me tomorrow.
that's fair. I mean, do you three have any comment on, or do you, I think you know about it.
I'm going to step out of character here for a minute and agree with Tom. The rail line is part of the growth that we're looking at, the community, the transportation corridor. I don't know how to go around this, but there's other study areas down there and completed study or just potential neighborhoods and things like that. I don't know. If something is a study area, what's that mean? What do we do? Does that mean we'll talk about it 2 years from now instead of 10 years, or?
So the question was asked if I thought there might be a more appropriate way to add this into the plan, and just to be clear and consistent with all of the past statements I've made, I don't think there's any responsible way to add this individual parcel into the plan at this point in time. It's contrary to everything we've heard through public input about rural preservation, and specifically the meeting that we held in this room with District 4 residents who went through their comment forms and repeated that they like to support orderly growth and development and to preserve ag-land and rural character. So for all of those sort of public input reasons, this would be contrary to that. I think it's a really good example of poor planning practice, if you could even say planning at all. It's just simply not planning to put manufacturing or plastics or any of that sort of isolated land use adjacent to a school. And I've expressed concern with the school site being an isolated land use as well, and the development pressure that it's going to put on the city and the Plan Commission and the council when developers and other private property owners will undoubtedly come before you and ask for further amendments to the plan, which now we're putting ourselves into this rabbit hole that we haven't even looked at any data. We've gone through this entire process with the understanding from the Common Council that major changes to the land use map would not be made. Through both bodies and through the public, we've decided that we would add the two parcels, Edgewood and Oregon. But beyond that, I mean, there are a whole lot of considerations that go into these things, and one of them being sanitary sewer provision and the whole network of sewer systems that I can't speak to detail of, but we haven't looked at the district map that even identifies where your sewer interceptors are and what kind of capacity that they're intended to serve throughout the community. And these areas were not included for a number of reasons. We talked about the growth models, and one of the considerations is the rail corridor or a high transit corridor. So to address that point, that wasn't the only factor or consideration that drove growth into those locations. We weighed a number of different factors in 2009, including the rail corridor, but also ability to service, proximity to the rest of the community, planned uses, in an orderly fashion, et cetera. So that's sort of a rambling summary of a lot of the things that we've already covered. Public input would be contrary to this. It's isolated and could be a conflict land use with the school. It's not predictable. You're allowing a manufacturing site potentially adjacent to someone who maybe planned to build their retirement home in the country. All of these things that we've talked about in the past.
Boy, I can see some people you're keying on, I used a plastic plant, but that's not, it could be something else. It doesn't have to be that. That was an example. And
But in theory, it'd be so.
with respect, Sonia, I'm just telling you, prior to your arrival, what was said in this city for the past years, that we would have business along the rail line. And I've talked about this before. I just didn't bring this up tonight. There's planners here that have seen this before. I've talked about this before, and I'll probably talk about it again tomorrow night. And I've been very honest and open about this thing. This hasn't been hide and seek. And it even goes further than this, that this applicant, this person you heard from tonight, God bless her, she went out of her way to talk to every council member, as many planners sitting up here as possible, And some of you have said one thing and done another. She has spoken and taken her time and talked to people in this city, including city staff. Not you, Sonia, I don't mean that way. And this is the kickback we're getting, and that's okay. But I'm still going to do my job, and I'm going to stand up for something that I believe in. And I believe in the rail line, and this lady has waited 10 years. And for those people in the city that are watching, here's an individual that has waited 10 years to do something on this piece of property. And everybody seems to be looking the other way except Tom Clotter. Take it for what it's worth. And don't hold me to a plastic plant. Make it up. Make something up. Put Costco out there. Put Cabela's. Do you want me to keep going? Put something out there that can use the rail line. I'll tell you something we lost. Let me tell you something we lost with this exact piece of property. It was called Brunzell Lumber. And I bet some of their relatives that are related to people in Fitchburg are watching this tonight. Brunzell Lumber owned that land, and we said goodbye to them. And Brunzell Lumber, if you don't know, is like Menards, like that type of business. We lost them. I rest my case. I kind of think that nobody wants to talk up here tonight on this besides myself. That's fine. But I brought it forward. I'll bring it forward tomorrow night, at least for the council to give me their opinion on. That's all. And thanks for Mayor. Thanks for contacting the village. I appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully I have some more for tomorrow. Further comments, thoughts, anything?
Let me ask a question on this too. If this is voted on tonight, Sonia, in your eyes, I think the city council can change it, right? After 30 days?
If there's a substantive change, like someone's parcel-specific land use, that would require the council to agree with the Plan Commission's recommended version.
So we get back to this ping pong.
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
I hope the city of Fitchburg hears this. And I'm a little surprised there's only 8 people here tonight. I'm shocked. But however many there's here. Unbelievable. Let me make this real clear. Let's get this clear. So if this passes tonight, we have 30 days, and the city council makes changes. Then it has to come back to the Plan Commission, am I right?
Depends on the changes.
Right?
Depends on the changes. So if it's a land use difference, yes. If it's a policy thing, no.
Okay. Take me the next step from there. So it goes to the city council. I think the public should know too. If you can remember, Sonia, I mean, you know, the next steps.
Sure. So we have a scheduled public hearing and potential action by the council on March 10th. The Plan Commission will send a recommended plan to them, hopefully tonight. If the council disagrees on any of the changes that we've made or wants to change language, we would look at what those changes are, determine if they're substantive in the city attorney's opinion. If they are, they would be sent back until the Plan Commission agrees with the council in order to adopt those changes. But what we can say for sure is that it is if it's a specific parcel land use change, like the one you're discussing, or the 4 that are already included, the 2 bodies do need to agree on that.
Let's just say that the city council doesn't agree with this language. It's on the screen. And the city council does not like what the Plan Commission gave them. we get the ping pong match. I'm sorry, that's not the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say. I don't mean it disrespectful.
That might not be the case on this example of the language that's on the screen. These are things that we'll need to review with the city attorney to determine if this is a substantive change that affects someone's land use. Generally speaking, she's communicated that if it's something more general and does not affect an individual's property rights, that the two bodies could disagree.
Other comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I want to go back to this, what's on the screen. Mayor, how do you want to handle that as far as people's opinion? Could we have a roll call on this?
I think, I mean, there's been a few things, some more controversial than others, and it seems like we probably need to go through all of them and do some kind of either a motion or a vote on all of them. I see this as being one. Ed's change to the minor amendments, that bullet there is another one. I mean, we can approve Zach's edit grammar things. I mean, those are pretty minor. And then the property that you just mentioned seems like the fourth one that people want to discuss.
Take them separate?
Yeah. Take it separately, and then the overall plan from there. Go through it individually, and then kind of do an overall approval or not or denial at that point. So, unless there's other things people want to bring up or talk about, I mean, I don't want to cut off conversation, but obviously there's a number of things that we talked about already, and so it seems like those are things that we need to decide how we want to put it into what we're recommending anyway. So, I mean, I think the first one is it's not on the screen anymore, how the process works, I guess, the red or the blue text.
Do we need a motion?
I think
or-
that'd probably be the best is to, if someone wants to change it, would be to change it to the red, and we'll see if it passes.
I move it reverts to what it formerly said.
The red language.
Showed it in
essentially.
red language.
Second.
All right. Any further
Right.
discussion?
Right, okay.
Yep. I think we probably do need to do
So-
a roll call just to make sure.
Sure.
So a yes would be you want it to be red, a no would be blue.
Kinney?
Aye.
Clouder?
No.
Heller? Absent. Billings?
Aye.
Tate?
Yes,
Manning?
Yes.
Mayor?
No.
So 4-2, it passes.
Okay. And then we had Ed's bullet on, what page was it again?
Page
438,
453.
453.
A few guidelines.
We'll give
Were there
a minute
any
to
issues
pull
on
that up.
that or on Zach's, or could we take
Yeah, we
this?
could probably combine.
all those together?
we combine.
Unless someone has an issue with any of, okay.
That was just adding neighborhood plan, right? I think that is key, because I do think,
Yeah, I
once
agree.
that plan's in place, we should be following the plan.
Yeah, we could combine those.
I also have the very minor changes in attachment B. It might be appropriate to put those in the
sure.
same motion.
Okay. If someone, wants to make
Want
a
me to
motion,
tell you what they are, I can.
a lot of typo
Yep.
type thing.
Watershed name clarification, filling in watershed names per CARPC data, making sure the map has the correct 100-year floodplains per FEMA information. I'll skip that one for now. Retitling maps, adding percentages that were missing, adding industry sector percentages to the graph, removing some unnecessary text. And then there was one policy addition. We did go through this earlier, but this would read, develop ordinances and policies that encourage electrification and alternative fuel usage in commercial and passenger vehicles and expand the supply of electric vehicle charging stations. This came from Transportation and Transit Committee after your last meeting. That's why it wasn't included before.
Okay, so if someone wants to motion to accept those Zach's edits and then the bullet edit that Ed had.
Sure, I'll move all those as a slate.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? I feel like this one I can do just without a roll call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, good. I was worried about that. And then, Tom, I'm guessing that you would like to make a motion on the study piece or whatever it is that you want to do.
Area.
Just adding the, you have it in front of you, I'm not going to read it all. Just adding the area across from the school in reference to the study in a study plan, because it should go through the process. I'm not making it clear, I'm not trying to go avert anything, it has to go through the process. But this land should just be looked at in a study plan for the future. As far as I've heard some people, the applicant even talked to people that wanted it even going further up to Highway 14 or maybe going to M. That's fine. That's for the future discussion, okay? I know that was brought up, but I'll leave it at that. You have it in front of you, so.
Okay, so
I do have a question. What does this even mean?
Right.
Like, I don't really understand what's being asked here. Like,
What is,
there's no
The way I see it,
explanation on, what we're actually voting for. What is a study area? What does that mean for the comp plan? I mean,
I almost feel like you need to get an answer from the government or the Village of Oregon before we say anything. There's no point in voting it if there's never going to be services there. They're too far from us, correct? Unless he says, sure, and what we know is there's a no there except for a school.
I think Sonia reminded us enough that.
A little bit of an answer. It's the land across from the school. It's 40 acres, okay?
No, I
Do you
get
know where,
it.
do you know where the school is?
Yeah.
Okay. Across the street, there's 40 acres. It's right next to McDonald's. It's on the rail line. There's a fence line. It's not spelled out here, but actually, I even kind of appreciate waiting for tomorrow night if you want to, or we'll wait and, I'm fine with that.
I just don't know how we vote if we
don't.
We're kind of in this position where they don't get services from us, but they can't get from Oregon. There's no, it's awkward.
Well, the
all around the
services
world.
has to come from Oregon. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to run services down to this far south.
Right.
Just like the school has not asked the city of Fitchburg for services. The school has asked services from Oregon.
Correct.
So there's no difference here. But as far as your question, Mayor, I'm fine with that.
you just want to wait and discuss more tomorrow night?
Can you get an answer tomorrow?
I hope so.
I'm fine with it.
I hope they do, but yeah.
See what they say.
Okay.
All for
So we'll kinda
development.
wait
But
to-
it just seems like there's so many huge question marks to make that kind of decision that far away from the service area of a plan that we spent 6 months amending.
That's fine.
Okay.
So,
So it sounds like we're gonna wait
question.
and not take action on that. Yeah, Rich?
So if the council rejects what we've put forward, then this will come back here, correct?
Not
And then we'll end up with another month in the process, or no?
Not necessarily. So if they were to reject any of the land use pieces, that for sure would have to come back.
So like this
Something
piece, I mean,
like
'cause-
this is not land use. This is more policy, and that's where it's a little more gray. I think it's possible that it does not have to come back.
But that's the current rules too, until we change it. That's
No.
what we go by though.
No, because this is policy, it's not land use. The minor amendments are about land use. And so that piece, there has to be agreement.
Well, it sounded like the attorney will make the decision on if this is going to.
Yeah, I mean, she's indicated that it's not for sure that would have to come back. So. Right, so I don't think then there's any other pieces that we want to discuss at this point, other edits or changes. So I think we've got all the amendments in, which means that I believe we could make a motion to approve as amended.
And just to be clear, there was no motion on the con property at all, correct?
Right, correct.
I'll move approval of Plan Commission Resolution and Ordinance 2020-0-05 as discussed tonight and amended.
Is there a second? Seconded by Wayne. All right. Any further questions or anything? Sure.
Kinney?
Aye.
Clouder?
No.
Billings?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Manning?
Yes.
Mayor?
Aye.
5-1 passes.
All right. Any report from the department?
February 18th, is that our next meeting? I believe so. Yep, February 18th is our next Plan Commission meeting. Next steps in the comp plan process. Tomorrow night, we'll be at Committee of the Whole. No vote will be taken by the council at that time. It's informational. We'll go through the plan in a little bit more detail than we did tonight. So that's just for informational purposes. And then we'll publish a Class 1 notice, followed by a 30-day public comment period. For the public information, any comments can be sent to planning staff, planning@fitchburgwi.gov, or to your elected officials. And then we do have the public hearing scheduled on March 10th and potential action by the council.
All right. Ed?
I just would like to note that Ag and Rural is planning a annual public listening session. It'll be at the March 17th meeting at 4 o'clock, and probably will be hosted by Durfers as it has been in the past. There'll be more information coming out on this, but for those listening, that is coming up as well.
All right.
It wasn't my idea. Put it on St. Patrick's Day. You can be sure. Nor was it Roger Cohees, but
All right. Any other announcements at all?
probably top.
Staff, any announcements? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. All right, we are adjourned.